Welcome to 𝗬𝗃𝗍𝗂𝗍𝒻, Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁.
Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of 𝗬𝗃𝗍𝗂𝗍𝒻, Appraisers on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁. I'm excited to have a very experienced and well-rounded and just all-around great guy as our guest for this episode. But before we jump in, just need to ask you to do what only you can do. Would you believe that only 47% of you actually hit the subscribe button and like the episode? I know you're going to love the episode because it's Joe, but show him a little love early on and go ahead and hit those buttons, because that helps get the word out to everybody else, because it is that power of word of mouth that continues to spread from this, what was once an idea several years ago now, to thousands upon thousands of appraisers to take this in on a regular basis. So Joe, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you being with us.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on your show. You're the greatest guy to handle this kind of work. I think you absolutely should have been in television to begin with. So this is exactly what you should be doing. I love it.
I appreciate you, man. My mom always said had a face for radio, so maybe like somewhere in the broadcast space could have pulled that one off.
I always had a friend of mine that said that too. So I don't know. Maybe it's not good. Huh?
Oh my goodness. Well, Joe, everybody loves to hear, were you born this way, or how did you get into the appraisal and valuation profession?
Boy, that's a funny story. That's a funny question. I apologize for the dog barking.
That's all right. That just means we're in the home space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out working for not the Chicago Assessor's Office, but I started working out for a company that contracted out. Basically, they went out and did revaluations in certain towns for assessor's offices. So
really,
yeah, and it happened to be in 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁, Wisconsin, where I went to high school, where I graduated high school.
Yeah,
and they were doing a revaluation in 1981.
all right.
I've been doing this about 45 years. I started in July of 1981. Working as I went out. I was called a lister. I had to go out and look like a lister. We listed. We went out and measured homes, and then listed what was inside of them. I'd go inside and I checked the little boxes that it had wood floor or carpeting, drywall or plaster, and then we measure and make all these notes for the assessor when they went through the computer assisted mass appraisal.
Yeah.
And I liked it a lot, and one of the guys there, I still remember his name, a fellow named 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁. He worked for American Appraisal at one point in time. After that, he said, "Joe, you're really good at this. You really ought to think about this as a career."
Wow.
I hadn't thought it, because at that point I was 2 years into college, and I actually had taken a semester off to make some money.
Yeah, of course.
In the semester, and so I could pay for the next year. And
sounds familiar.
That was it. And I took what he said to heart, and I stayed with it. And I liked it. I liked the whole idea of what we were doing. So I wanted to learn more, and I became a supervisor there. And I started, and that was all in the residential area. By the time I had a year into doing homes in that area, I probably had already been into 1,000 homes at that point in time.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and probably a little bit more, actually, when I think about it. But the point is that there was a lot of experience with buildings right away. And then I started doing commercial and industrial work, and I liked that even more. And I ended up going to work for a local appraiser in Milwaukee, actually. His name was Jerry Tyson. It was called Tyson and Associates. And yeah, he had about 10 guys that were appraisers. And back then it was all guys.
Yeah, I get that.
And I learned how to do valuation of homes and so commercial properties, mainly from him. I wanted to learn more, and I joined the Appraisal Institute. Got a job with a company called Valuation Research, which is, and they still exist. They're a nationwide company. And, they provide basically commercial and industrial services, not only real estate, but machinery, equipment, and business valuation. So that was my entree into that whole realm. was really an interesting, really interesting start.
That is amazing. So out of a typical teenager's need to earn some income,
Yep.
you get an opportunity that ends up turning into your life's career, which is valuation.
Yes.
Wow.
5 years later.
Joe, I got to tell you, every single episode, hundreds of them now, there's always something new, unique, and specific for each and every guest. And that is by far, that's a story we have never heard before. So you get in, you get, I'm just curious. I didn't start in the profession as far back as you did, but from an assessing standpoint, did people want to let you into their homes? Or did they have to? Did you show up like a badge? You're like, hi, I'm Joe with a badge to come in and look through your house.
It was funny because we had an ID from the assessor's office, and it was a government ID.
Okay.
And they gave us a little, basically like a plastic card case that had a window, and you can hold it up from the assessor's office. Yeah. And I would say out of, like I said, in the first year, I probably went through 1,000 homes.
Yeah.
Despite there was people that weren't home.
Yeah, of course.
On the ones that were at home, I would say 95% of them let me in. And
wow.
And back then, the laws in Wisconsin were that they could do what's called a doomage assessment. If you did not let the assessor in, I could pretty much put anything I wanted on that thing.
Wow.
So I'm paraphrasing, of course, and
of course.
That's the deal. But the point is that if you didn't know exactly what was inside, you had to estimate based on your knowledge and that kind of thing. And say, tell people, look, what's really within your best interest to let me in, because I can write down exactly what's here when people want. And so most of the time that prevailed. But there were people that were angry, and there were dogs that chased me, and I got wet, I got cold. I'm out in the rain, I'm out in snowstorms. That year happened to be a big, 1981 happened to be a big snow year, up to my waist in snow, measuring a house for a couple of days. And
jeez,
it was fun.
That is quite the experience. And you mentioned that in the process of being in, going to school, that they said, hey, you've got an aptitude for this. Did you then take economics and real estate courses, or did you become like a philosopher and then you just went and got a job in appraisal when you graduated?
That's a great question, actually. So the first 2 years, I was in engineering.
Really?
Because I like buildings.
I
always liked buildings.
Got
it. In the first 2 years, I was in engineering, and I started doing that. And not that I didn't have an aptitude for engineering, because maybe I didn't. And a guy said, look, you know what, for this kind of work, you'd really be better served if you change your major to economics. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
I had some good tutelage, if you will, back then. And so I went and changed my major to economics, and the next, I ended up going to school at night because I liked working so much. Worked at the day, and then went to school at night, and finished up my economics degree. I should have been done in like 1983 or 84. I didn't finish till 87. But I did, and got my degree in economics from the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, and that was it.
Well, that is amazing. And that's a great school from an educational standpoint, and not just economics, but real estate. So that's something else. So then you come out into just what most people experience, and that is you join a firm, had about 10 people, and it sounded like you started out in residential.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
For 6 years of my appraisal career, I was largely residential.
Okay.
And it did some small commercial buildings and that kind of thing. But then in 86, I got a job with that valuation research. I was a semester away from finishing it at Wisconsin, and they hired me to become an appraiser there. And it happened to be during in 1987, if you remember. 1987 was a recession year. Got laid off later that year.
That sucks.
Layoff.
Yep.
But anyways, that was the first of many that certainly I saw in my lifetime.
Totally the case there. So at that point, did you just hang up your own little shingle and it said, Joe loves appraisal, and just go back door to door?
Well, what I did was I got a call from a headhunter one day, and he said, I had sent in my resume to him for something. And he said, I got this opportunity. Maybe you might like it. And I said, sure. What is it? He goes, well, 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 needs a property tax representative. I'm like,
really?
And at that point in time, I'm like, who's 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁? Well, I knew what 𝗁𝗁𝗁 was because at that point in time, that was a space shuttle Challenger had already blown up.
Yeah.
So I knew
Wow.
who they were, but I didn't know everything about them. And I didn't realize that it was molten salt and 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 and then 𝗁𝗁𝗁, which was so I went, that job brought me to Chicago. And,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
that was,
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't even know that name anymore today, how big of an industrial conglomerate they were.
yeah, people still see the molten salt on the salt shed in Chicago.
Yes.
But, and I did that building back in the day.
Oh, what?
It's neat. I've done it recently as well, so I know exactly what it looked like back 30 years ago. And then
Wow.
I went and did it just this last year, and so it was an interesting time to go through. I was telling the people when I went there, I said, yeah, I knew exactly what this looked like back then. So
That's a phenomenal kind of experience. So when you got to join that firm of about 10 people, was that just one of those hop in the passenger seat and ride along, and it's the old cave drawings, like you do what the guy in front of you does thing, or what was learning like for you back in that decade?
there was a gentleman, his name, Jerry Tyson was he was the SRA that.
Oh, okay.
And he had on his staff a fellow named John Gruba, and John trained me to become a residential appraiser. I went with him on my first month. I went on homes with him, and he basically I ended up doing a couple of appraisals that he would kind of grade. And at that point, after a month, they said, "Okay, walk into your first one," and they had me do a fairly simple one first.
Yep.
And they liked the way that worked out, and just move on from there. And I was with that firm for about 5-6 years before I went to Valuation Research. So I became fairly adept at doing homes and small commercial buildings. But I certainly knew Milwaukee like the back of my hand back then.
I was gonna say that was local stomping grounds. So then you get an opportunity to move to Chicago, more 𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁. That's clearly all commercial and industrial. What was that transition like for you?
It was like drinking from a fire hose. Like,
I imagine so.
It really was because, first of all, because of the time at Valuation Research, I had some exposure to some big properties and things like at Valuation Research. I didn't know what a fixed asset listing was going to look like, so I knew what that was, and I learned all about the different things at Valuation Research. But now I was inside at a Fortune 500 company. Actually, they're at that point in time, they're Fortune 200. So they're pretty big. And I worked in the tax department and the real estate department, so I got to know everything about a big company like that, and it helped shape my knowledge with respect to corporate America.
Yeah.
And I really liked it, but I decided that, geez, first of all, I like being an appraiser, and so that was the part I liked the best. So then I ended up, I started looking for new work after about 4 or 5 years there, and I found public accounting. I went from basically that company to public accounting, and
makes sense.
That was a deal.
Yeah, and that's for those that have any sense of the industry, that completely makes sense because you're working for an industrial, the type of company that would engage public accounting in the first place for their annual reporting and their statements and their filings. So interesting, because you came from residential over to industrial and commercial, did they have any type of development program for you, or there's like, welcome, Joe, go get this done?
That was pretty much it. The fellow that I worked for was really a great guy. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about writing and doing things the right way. And then another fellow that worked for me basically had been in the industry a long time too, and he was a good teacher. I learned a lot from him as well, and I ended up really getting quite a bit of knowledge to understand what it was all about from that perspective. And I learned that's really where I started doing more machinery and equipment type stuff as well. Yeah. In addition to real estate, so I learned all that there. So ultimately, I was able to get a machinery and equipment designation as well, along with my real estate designation.
Yes. So a lot of people don't know anything about, and Joe, I believe you're probably going to be quick reflection over our hundreds of guests. I think you're our first perusing's guest in the machinery and equipment space. Share a little bit about what you were doing and what that was all about, and what the training and development you got in that area.
Well, so I have the MAI for real estate. I have from the AMEA, I have the Certified Equipment Appraiser designation from them.
Yeah.
And then also from the International Business Appraisers, I have their designation for business valuation. And over the years, over time, after being certainly with Morgan and then public accounting, there are certain things that you learn along the way, and you're like, well, yeah, this makes plenty of sense. And I guess I should take my knowledge and my experience and apply it here. And there were many different things that training along the way, whether it be taking accounting or taking basically industrial machinery type classes, taking other real estate classes. I took the assessor's personal property valuation class. There were many things over the years that I just ended up, the classes I took, things I read. And what also helped solidify my knowledge from my perspective was I wrote articles on different things, different subjects that I found interesting in the area. So like the first article, technically I have 3 articles in the Appraisal Journal.
Congratulations. That's 3 more than almost everybody else.
Yeah. So I have that, and I'm not as prolific as the fellow that used to be with 𝗁𝗵𝗵𝗶. Yeah, that guy is like the most prolific guy ever.
He like woke up and wrote an article.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think he wrote 24 hours a day. Guy's amazing. Very impressive. And I definitely looked up to that guy.
Yeah.
Make a long story short, though, and then I wrote a couple for machinery equipment and journals, and then I ended up writing some other industry-related articles, things like that. So what it did was it helped me read, not relearn, but helped me learn different areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right about it.
And for people that don't have an experience around valuation of machinery and equipment, not even getting into business valuation, who are the users of those services, and what are you actually doing?
We do, or my firm does evaluations for a number of different reasons. It's not unlike yours. We do evaluations for certainly property tax appeals, and that can be both real estate and machinery equipment given any specific jurisdiction. About 40 states tax business personal property.
I didn't know that. 40 states tax business personal properties. So clearly there's a big need for machinery and equipment appraisal.
Yep. Well, I do a fair amount in Texas, and that's probably the biggest state where I do machinery equipment work. But I've done it in Oklahoma and in Louisiana, some in California. All those states tax personal property, but it's actually more interesting in states where they don't tax machinery equipment, because they're still then with manufacturing real estate or industrial real estate. There are things that act like machinery equipment that may be real estate and vice versa. So that classification of whether or not it is or it isn't was important.
Yes.
And certainly,
that's really important. Goodness.
That's always fun to be a part of, right, in that kind of situation. But
so is the M&E, as it's commonly referred to, valuation, is it predominantly for taxation purposes, either from a SALT approach or from a property tax approach?
Some, and then also I've done a fair amount for the cost segregation analysis.
Sure.
I've done work for federal tax purposes. Back in the day, there was basically if you classified certain things as real estate versus personal property.
Yep.
And I don't remember what tax code it was, but it was called 25 years ago.
Yeah, IRC something or other.
Yeah, exactly. But there was that kind of situation, and also, frankly, for gift in estates, trusts, probate, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
And I've done things like fleets of ships for those kind of things. I did a fleet of ships, so there were basically North Atlantic oil supply vessels. Very interesting I'm out on the North Atlantic on a tugboat, and then maybe a month later I was on the West Coast in Portland off the river on a barge. So yeah, it was kind of fun. I've gotten some good experience back in maritime valuation. And by the way, that was a great class. The guy who's really probably the best is a guy named and I'm probably gonna say it wrong, but he was 𝗬𝗫𝘂𝗿 or something of those.
Okay.
He was I took his class, and it was probably one of the best classes I'll ever take.
Didn't even know that existed. But then again, that's part of life, is you don't even know what you don't know. That is something else.
And there's actually a whole group that does valuation of airplanes, and I've read a lot of their stuff too, because as an accounting firm, we ended up having review appraisals from people that did that, basically for audits.
Yes.
And so I became fairly versed in that information as well. But and here again, you were asking me what purposes, but I've done purchase price allocation work for financial reporting. I've also done for the audits that need basically the work of a specialist. In respect, I've had to review appraisal reports for the auditor, because by the way it's classified in accounting, is you have to have somebody like me with my designation.
Yes.
Review the appraisal and provide our
opinion.
Yep. So I've done that. I've done a lot of bankruptcy work back in the days.
Okay.
I've done some financing. I really don't do a lot of financing work. Basically, the big banks are CBRE, 𝗁𝗵𝗵𝗶, you name it. All the big firms do that work. And,
Yes.
We get generally. And I know you do some financing work, and God bless you for that. That you're able to. Yeah, you do okay though. And
Do a little bit of it. We much prefer to be in the lanes, not all the way specialized as you are, but much less. Coming out of banking, I love local banking. I could care less about regional and national banking.
Yeah. And I've done very little retail banking. I've done some wholesale banking. That's it. And that's fine.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. For people that have never been exposed to machinery and equipment, there's a sense, at least for people in real estate appraisal, like I can probably figure out the value no matter how complex the asset is, because it's probably not so far complex I can't get my head around it. But showing up and having to do an M&E appraisal of a Morton 𝗬𝗪𝗁 plant, like how do you even begin to walk us through what that might look like, Joe?
Sure. Generally speaking, you can do a couple of different things, all right? And there are specialized assets, and I can talk about that in a little bit, but just your general run-of-the-mill, let's say a pump or something of that nature. First of all, there's many of them, all right?
Yes.
So, and you always generally know what the historical cost is, and then you can take that historical cost and trend it to modern day. So today, 2026, and then depreciate it accordingly. Let's say it's been around since 2020, so 6 years on, let's say, a 8-year life.
Yep.
And so it's at that point 75% good.
Okay.
Whatever that number is, 80%.
Yes.
I can't do it on top, guys.
Oh, it's all right. But that's the approach. One approach is like a depreciated cost approach, is what you're saying.
And the second is something like a pump. And if I know the manufacturer, I know the horsepower, or something of that nature, as long as I know basically the production statistics, then I can go to the secondary market and I can find out what a 2020 half horsepower pump is selling for. And I can get not unlike when you do any type of building, you find a bunch of comps and come up with a number. And you can do an income approach, but it's I just think you can get a lot of different answers with income approaches because there's so many different kinds of leases. But yeah, you could do it that way too.
Yeah, that creates quite an interesting challenge when you're trying to get the income approach. But then again, thank goodness for the big red book by Granger and the yellow one from McMaster-Carr. It's just to be able to look
that helps. And there's a couple of different online resources that you can. I think I paid $99 for this basically this list of assets. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, data. Data is gold in those kind of situations.
It is king.
And then you also mentioned a third type of valuation. Again, something we've had very little conversation of over the last a couple hundred episodes, and that's business valuation. So you brought in, you get exposed through a large industrial with industrial valuation, and then machinery and equipment, and then you mentioned business valuation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. And part of it, the reason why I became interested in it to begin with is that over the years, there's been a lot of controversy over values of hotels, senior living, things like that. And really what it did was it really touched on a lot of the principles, business valuation, and really furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So any given hotel, any given senior living place is going to have a couple of components. It's going to have real estate, it's going to have FF&E, and it's going to have some business associated with it. Now, there's a lot of things you can read out there, and there's a lot of different philosophies, but on the whole, they have those three categories. And how you interpret that, and what you say about it later on, and how it's quantified, and what it's used for, there's a lot of different ways that you can wind up with an answer in that respect. And I'm not saying anything other than that. This is that there's a way to come up with a number.
No, that's phenomenal. So so you got this opportunity. I assume they send you all around the country or around the world with Morton Thiokol?
It was back in those days. It was just around the United States.
Okay. So you were stacking up those frequent flyer miles before people really paid attention to what they were.
Michael, I was 28, and I thought I had the world by the tip. While here I was making $35,000 a year. Man.
A lot of money. A lot of money
back then. I felt like I was on the top of the world. And I remember thinking, I was in the car one time, driving in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana. I'm like, man, this is the greatest. I'm sorry. I've always been, truthfully, I've been really that happy about what I do throughout my whole life. I love the sport, and that's something.
I love that about it. And as you touch on, one of the things for those that haven't had an opportunity to have a corporate job of that nature is, sure, they're giving you a salary, but every day you're on the road, they're paying for you. When I worked in corporate, we used to buy and build up businesses and then sell them off. I mean, it was beautiful because they're financing your life is the way I looked at it. It's like, I get my salary. Oh, and by the way, I don't have to pay for my lunch today or my dinner, the car, the hotel, the travel, all the flyer miles and all the little statuses that accumulate with it. After a while, you just get tired.
And the other side of about $35,000 is a lot of money, I think, being that young. But the other half of it is that when you got your budget, and I'm like, okay, I got rent, and okay, I understand what the food is, and I'm like, man, it's going to be tight if I have to buy that 30-day train pass. So
exactly.
I'll buy the week at a time, or the 10 ride at a time.
10 ride, yeah.
Just make sure. So every time I was on the road, I'm like, that's the day I don't have to use that pass. I'm saving money.
I'm with you. I spent over 2 years on the road, flew back and forth to Nashville. At some point, they're like, why didn't you just buy a house down here? I'm like, because I never thought I'd be here that long. 5 days, 4.5 days out of the week, I was working and I was getting paid, and they were taking care of all my expenses. So
there you go.
I had rent and my consumption costs back in Chicago and socialization. That's how stuff went. So you're traveling around, and for Morton, was it always in the property tax assessment space with them?
Yes, sir, it was.
Oh, wow. Amazing. How big are the assets that you would be called upon to handle? Because some people, they're like, look, I've done a little 3,000 square foot retail, or hey, here's a 10,000 square foot single pad site on an acre. But that's not the case of what stuff you're dealing with.
80% of all businesses fail within 5 years, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. With so many roles and responsibilities that must be managed and have nothing to do with appraisal reports, is it any surprise that it's hard to keep up? Much less having a sense of peace, stability, and profitability that comes from growing your business? Given all of this, you might already be thinking about exiting your business one day. Don't miss the limited opportunity to work with Michael, a real estate expert and professional coach. He has worked with more than 300 owners and entrepreneurs to find their highest and best use by solving problems that reach their most important goals. Compress decades of learning into days by working with Michael. Michael is famous in real estate and business coaching. With his help, you can accelerate your growth, increase your quality of life, and earn more money, all while ultimately doing less. Michael helps you not just grow your business, but also find new purpose in it and in your life. If you're ready to take control instead of being controlled, Contact him on LinkedIn or email him at michaelh@pahru.com.
The coolest asset that they had that I got to deal with was the where they made the solid rocket booster. I can't say a whole lot more than that, but
I get that.
It was a large facility, and it was very interesting.
Yeah. Are we talking hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of square foot under roof?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was big. Yeah.
That is quite the perspective. And back then there were no cell phones, so there were no selfies with Joe next to the bolt that holds the piece of the rocket together.
It was not. But boy, I tell you what, that was here again. I'm up to 30 years old, and I'm going through something like that. And it was amazing to see some of the things. And I saw I got to go down. One of the coolest things, part of that job too, was salt mines. I got a chance to go down to the salt mine. Actually, 3 of them.
I know nothing about salt mines. Where are they, and how big are they? And like, I assume it's a mine, so you're going underground. So it's like that big Caterpillar equipment doing stuff.
This part is public knowledge. Morgan had one, or I think still has one in a town north of Tyler, Texas, and then they have one just off of Lake Erie in Ohio.
Oh,
and then where was that? I know I went to one more. Where is that? Oh, that was, I think, in Kansas. And I went underground in all 3.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're anywhere between. It's thousands of feet generally. So
Holy smokes!
It's pretty interesting.
Do you get claustrophobic?
Thankfully, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I even know to ask that question is a buddy of mine used to work for Caterpillar, and he was a field engineer, and so his responsibility was to go on site when they had any type of recurring maintenance issue on equipment. He's like, Michael, like when you stood next to the tire, to get to the rim, it was above my head. That gives you some sense of how big the rubber was of the tire just to get to the rim. It felt like you were climbing up 3 or 4 stories to get to the cab. So I was like, okay. Yes, thank you so much, Neil. I appreciate you sharing that with me.
That's pretty cool.
That is something else.
That actually reminded me of I got a chance to tour the John Deere factory.
Oh,
and
yeah. Over in Moline?
Where was that? It was in Quad Cities.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it was, we were there for, I got invited by the Economic Development Association at
Sure.
John Deere Open. And so one of the days they had us out at the factory for a walk around. And my son at that point was like, I think Joey was only about 4 months, maybe. Oh no, but he was about 6 or 7 months at that point.
Okay.
So he was with us, and we put him in the tire well of one of the tractors.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, that was adorable. Yeah.
That is good. Against that green backdrop on the rims of those John Deere tractors.
Yellow, and he's sitting in there, you know.
Oh yeah. Green tractor, yellow rims.
This big.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's precious. That's definitely one for the books. And so, what was it like when you moved over from an industrial to going into public accounting?
There, all it did was multiply the opportunities. Really, at that point, because I'd had a corporate background and that kind of thing. I got to do a lot of different industries at that point.
Oh, I imagine so.
Food, machinery, equipment being built.
Yep.
It was funny. I think I'm trying to remember. I was trying to think if I ever did a child plan, and I did. Now I think about it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, when I was at public accounting.
Yes.
Chemicals, paper. Electric co-ops,
Really?
Yeah, power plants, gas power plants,
Yes.
pipelines. Yeah, we did all kinds of stuff back in those days, and so it was just really a very interesting time to be a part of public accounting. And it was, when you're in Big Four, you really, they talk about people in big accounting firms having to go and sell, and they do. But
yes,
when I look back and I'm like, man, a lot more work came over the transom than we ever had to really hunt for.
Yes.
It's much different than certainly guys like you and me now, small guys who have small firms. We have to go and we're pretty much hunting to get whatever work we get.
Yes.
Back in those days, yeah, a lot more was coming over that transom than I gave it credit for.
I having had so many peers that graduated and went into public accounting, my perspective was just, it's public accounting. And over the years, then and continued even still today, I'm always impressed at how broad the offering of services they have. It's basically, hey, they have a client has needs, then they will expand into the space that their clients have need for, as opposed to just being a specialty firm. It's like, gosh, it's so nice. We're like, oh, hey, can you guys also appraise these 17 properties for this client? They're like, yeah, of course we can. We maybe can't do an opinion letter on it. We'll have to have another firm do the opinion letter because it might be conflicted out. But of course we can provide those services. And what goes from whatever this billing is to goes to 3, 5, 7 times more. Yeah, it's so amazing. You talk about the business just coming in over the transom.
But what a great environment to. Here again, I started there in public accounting. I was still pretty young, 31 or whatever.
Oh, so wow.
To grow up in that kind of environment was really absolutely a treat. Camaraderie that you have, the friends. To this day, I still have friends from 𝗁𝗵𝗵𝗶, and we're still friends. And I get calls from them. And we get together periodically and that kind of thing. It was a good camaraderie to be a part of, and they're really good about taking care of their alumni, which is the neat thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. An alumni. It's like having a Harley-Davidson tattoo on your shoulder kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And I assume by going into public accounting, because of their established presence, that was a whole different level of training and development.
That second to none. You got all the training that you needed, at least from the certainly with the what was going on at the firm.
Yes.
You also got training, that stuff you had to take to be compliant, and you were responsible for X number of hours of continuing education every year.
Oh, interesting.
So we had to follow that.
Yes.
Even if you weren't a CPA at that point. You had to have that number of hours, and you had to show for that.
Yep.
Which was good, because obviously in the world of valuation, having a license now was something that was important.
Well, that's good. That's highly important. And then for those that are not familiar, haven't had the experience, or just have no awareness of working in public accounting, you were on a team. Were you on the appraisal team, or were you on property tax, or were you over in business valuation or machinery and equipment? Like, was there a particular, you were in fixed assets, or how did that go in terms of where you were?
My time at public accounting, I was a part of not only the property tax team, but also the valuation team. So I straddled two worlds.
Yep.
At one point in time, when I first joined KPMG, I was the only person there that they had that could value real estate.
Holy cow.
Yeah, because at that point in time, you had to have a license. And at that point in time, I was the only guy that had a license. And so I had the foresight to pick up back in 1991 when we started doing licenses for us appraisers.
Yes.
Illinois didn't even have a license yet. So the first one that came around in our area in neck of the woods was Michigan.
Oh, okay.
My first license came from Michigan.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't until a year later that Illinois had a license. So, yeah.
And so you're in the valuation advisory services space for the firm, which meant that my understanding is, therefore, you worked with a lot of the partners around the firm, like as opposed to just being a lot of people, for instance, when they start out in audit or they start out in tax, it's a very narrow pathway forward until it starts to open up, because you came in with industry experience, where you came in being the one person who could sit in both of the departments. I got to imagine that provided you extensive exposure.
I certainly had good access to a lot of people, which was about it.
Yeah. And did you have any mentors if you were that first person to be licensed doing the work and sitting in both departments, or did you have to make it up a little as you went along?
The partner that I have that I feel the most loyalty to is a guy named Mike Diadio. He was my partner at KPMG, and to me, he's still the greatest guy ever.
Oh, wow. And what was it about your working experience with him that has you say that?
I learned so much about just business in general, business and an accounting firm from him.
Yeah.
He did not hold back anything. I should one of my favorite. I'll try and say this very nice. And I remember saying something about, "Hey, Mike, can you do this?" And he'd say to me, turn to me and say, "I'm not your effing secretary. You do it."
You were really clear on where you stood with him, is what I understand.
Okay. Will do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit different culture back in those days.
Yeah. Back in those days, people are nicer and gentler these days for the most part.
Yeah.
I could remember seeing books fly at people for like,
Wow.
I saw one time in a partner's office, I could see the door was open, guys talking, and I saw a book fly like, over this guy's head. He was aiming for his head.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm just picturing the appraisal of real estate flying through. I'm like, that's just going to knock somebody out. Somebody's going down the count.
The bad joke would be it was a tale of two cities, and somebody could say, "Oh, there goes a flying saucer."
Oh,
sorry.
I love that, Joe. That's great stuff. So, in public accounting, did your, aside from the vast majority of assets you got to work on, what were the bigger challenges that you'd experienced? Because most people have never worked in public accounting in real estate valuation and valuation advisory services.
It was just generally, it was a function of what it was needed for. And generally speaking, in public accounting, if you weren't an auditor and if you weren't in tax, there was a likelihood that if you were in a particular area like I was in, that the client needed it yesterday.
Oh,
be like,
oh yeah.
Oh, you get a call from a tax partner or an audit partner, and they'd say, "Hey, we didn't realize this, but," and it was like, "Okay, well, when do you need it?" "We needed it last week." Well, okay, so I've got, can I take 5 days? This is like on a Friday. Anyway, you can get this on Tuesday? Man, we're like,
wow.
Yeah, I guess Tuesday it is.
I don't need sleep, and they don't have they have 5-hour energy and Red Bull back then.
Exactly.
Wow, that's quite the experience and exposure. And from your reference, you talked about where you've come to, and I know there's a lot of other great installments to your story. Most people tend to go to public accounting and stay, but somehow you got away. What was the inside track?
Ultimately, I went to work for my largest client, which was General Electric.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I went and spent 5 years at General Electric. 𝗁𝗶𝗀𝗶𝘀𝗿. I was on that team. And so there I got a chance to work on a lot of really interesting things.
Oh, my goodness. And when you say interesting, I mean, it's a whole different world compared to maybe my exposure and others. What is interesting to you when you get to go to GE Capital, which was, for a period of time, the largest financial company in the world?
Yeah, I got a chance to work on not only the capital stuff, but I got a chance to work on some of the industrial stuff. And that was that. At that point in time, I did a bunch of work for the aircraft engine business.
Oh, yeah.
And I did some work for the medical business. I did 1 or 2 small things for light bulb. So that was for it. And then on the capital side, they upload a lot of money to a lot of different things.
Oh, yes.
There were really a number of properties that turned out to be pretty cool.
So what are some examples of cool properties? You mentioned mines. You mentioned vessels, maritime opportunities. What else is there in the in the chapters of Joe Calvanico?
They had a really big appetite for mobile home parks.
Oh, interesting.
So that was kind of an interesting thing. When you deal with that many,
yes,
you get to learn certain trends and see certain things that not everybody gets. So it's fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a volume related business. So certain businesses, they did a lot of, let's say, office buildings in a particular area. And so you learned all the stuff about the particular geographical area and the buildings that they had.
That is phenomenal. Again, was that a domestic assignment, or was that continental, or was that global?
That was U.S.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. You just
I got to do when I was really before I opened J2C, I spent 5 years with 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗶, which is an investment bank here in Chicago. The one thing I got to do internationally there was that we had a rotational lady from Slovenia.
Slovenia.
And pretty good friends. And she said when she went back to Slovenia, she called me up and said, "Hey, I think I got you a speaking gig." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She was the Slovenian Association of Auditors, that basically handles all the valuation people. They need somebody to come in and talk about valuation for a week.
For a week, not a day or an hour, a week. Professor Joe in the house.
Yeah. So I got to go to Slovenia and work with some wonderful people. And,
got it.
I got to go to their capital, which is called Ljubljana. And I spent a week there basically lecturing to the appraisers there. Some of them spoke better English than I did, which was really interesting to begin with. But that was really a very interesting assignment, and
amazing.
Opened my eyes to a lot of different things that they thought were important.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that very much.
That is fascinating. As you touch on, the more you get to travel, the more you get exposure to different people and different domains of knowledge. It just both opens things up as well as expands space that you already know. Like, wow, I hadn't really thought about maybe that attribute or that characteristic or the impact or influence.
You know what was interesting about that too, and I was a little surprised by this, but I'll tell you the story is that I called up the American Society of Appraisers. I called the Appraisal Institute. And did I call another one? I think those are the main two I called because I was associated with both of them. I said, "Hey, look, I have this opportunity to go teach in this country." And
yeah.
I said, I know that you're all looking for international members. So
yes.
Would you be interested in maybe giving me one or two courses from your repertoire and having me go through it and then say, "Hey, look, this was provided by the that organization, and
sure,
I'd love to have you join," and that kind of thing. I got very little response to that. I was really surprised.
That's disappointing.
I got some minimal amount of interest. They sent me a couple of articles and things like that, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was a little surprised.
Wow. Now, you mentioned ASA, you mentioned the Institute. I'm trying to remember. You and I have a lot of history.
Yep.
Don't you have a degree from RICS?
Oh, yeah, I've got a 𝗲𝗏𝗁 designation. Yeah, and they didn't have. I asked if they had membership there as well, and they did. So
okay. Yeah. That I was going to say, because RICS compared to the ones you mentioned is, I would say, the global valuation education provider, and there's a much stronger alumni around the world, at least from my standpoint, based on people I connect with.
And I actually got to speak in London once because of our RICS. That was cool.
That is good for you for those opportunities.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned you went from a large capital firm to a smaller capital firm. Yeah. You alluded to it a little earlier with J2C. So how do you focus these days? You are a man of many talents, far exceeding almost all of our guests over everybody we've spoken to.
You're too kind. I started the firm during COVID. I went to Steve Sherman, who was my mentor and one of my fellow partners from KPMG.
Yep.
So I'm head of the practice at Loop, and then Jim Reynolds, who started Loop. And both guys are the greatest guys ever.
Oh, wow.
They were very supportive. Said, "Hey, Joe, we're still going to work with you," and that kind of thing. And still want you to be a senior advisor to us. I said, "Absolutely." And so they were very supportive of the whole thing. And
That's great.
Started J2C, and we will 5 years now this month.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's a
That's
hard work meets preparation is what many people say, with a little bit of perspiration sprinkled in regularly. Oh, goodness. Joe, given everything that you've seen and everything you've heard and experienced, what keeps you in the industry at this point? And then the follow-up question will be, what are you looking forward to?
Well, first of all, I love our industry, and profession, as they like to say, profession. So I love our profession. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good changes that are happening, and I'm happy to be a part of that as well. On the whole, it's good. It's been good to me. I want to give back as much as I could that I can. I've taught. I've been part of different chapters and different organizations. That's the deal.
One of the things you alluded to, but you didn't touch on, that I'm aware of, because routinely I call you at a time that you're not available, is you're a professor now.
I'm done. I'm done as of last year. I was teaching at 𝗁𝗲𝗍𝗶.
I always think of you as a professor, but so you've really taken that teaching and education to another level.
I did, and thanks to Colette English Dixon at Roosevelt. She brought me on there for a couple of years. Had a great opportunity to meet some great students, wonderful people at the university, and now they actually have a new professor that's a fellow named 𝗁𝗵𝘵. I think he came out of Auburn or one of the two.
Oh, okay.
One of the southern schools, and really sharp guy, and he's doing a good job over there. He's got some good students. So on the whole, we're doing a good job over there, and I was very thankful for the experience.
I love that. I love that. So what are you looking forward to or optimistic about over the next 3 to 5 years?
Not unlike you, you're, by the way, you were certainly an inspiration of me starting my own firm as well. You've done so much good work, and we're always very positive about things. So not unlike you, I'd love to grow my firm a little bit more. I'm not sure how many years. I've got a 16-year-old son, Joey, so I'm going to be working for quite a while. I'm not going to be ending anytime soon.
Joe, you got too much energy to be ended anytime soon. You don't exactly strike me as the type to sit under the cabana with a beverage in your hand and a book in the other hand.
Not for more than a day or two at a crack, though, Michael. I don't think I could take much more of that.
I totally get that too. That's the thing I appreciate about you most, is you're more likely to be somewhere, like today, for instance. You're on assignment, so to speak, and that's what I appreciate about you, is because of the broad exposure that you have, and you've continued to maintain a lot of relationships, and that opens up a lot of doors and assignments for you that most people will never get a shot for, because, as you said, you've literally spent nearly your whole life here, except for those early teen years. So nothing else really counted.
Yeah, the first travel job I had, I couldn't drink because I wasn't 21 yet.
Aside from being boyish looking, like they didn't actually know the difference.
It was like, I told you I worked for that firm.
Yep.
And it was in Waukesha. First reval.
Yep.
But before that one started, they needed a couple of guys to go to St. Joe, Michigan.
Okay.
And about 3 months there during the summer.
Yep.
And do a reevaluation at St. Joe, Michigan.
Got it.
And they put us all up in a hotel for 3 months.
Sure.
And in Wisconsin, drinking age was 18, so I was fine in Wisconsin. But in Michigan, it was 21.
Oh,
so
no.
These guys would go out for drinks. I couldn't go.
That's terrible.
It was terrible.
That's like hazard pay. You earned hazard pay for that.
It was like 20 and a half, okay? I should have.
I need a friend that marginally like me so I can just go in and be him for the evening.
So they bring beer back for me and let me drink in the room.
Oh, that's awful thoughtful of those peers years there. Oh, my goodness. Joe, I really appreciate you joining us for this episode of Appraisers on Purpose podcast. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about machinery and equipment, or the business valuation work you do, or the way you've integrated things, or any of the assets you've talked about, how can they connect with you?
So our website is j2cvaluation.com.
Yep.
My email is joe@j2cvaluation.com.
Yep.
And my phone number is 312-953-9842.
And if he doesn't answer, just send him a text. And when he's next available, he'll get back to you. He's very responsive.
That I am.
Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Friends, thanks for being part of this episode. Joe, any parting words of wisdom?
You know what? Find something you like and do that. That's the best thing I can tell you. Exactly.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of 𝗬𝗪𝗍𝗍 Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of 𝗬𝗪𝗍𝗍 Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.